Today we're going to be taking a look at a set that honestly really excites me, that being 75436, the Mandalorian and Grogu speeder bike. This set just released on January 1st with 58 pieces and a retail price of only $10. And that price point is why this set excites me, because that's kind of a big deal. Over about the past decade, every time LEGO has released a sub $20 set, it has always been a part of 4 sub-themes, that being battle packs, microfighters, mechs, and polybags, making it the first standalone sub $20 Star Wars set to release since 2014. With the Battle of Saleucami set that was $15, and the first standalone $10 set to release since 2006 with the first Republic V-Wing. So after a little over a decade hiatus of sets like this, it is very exciting to get a new one because it makes me wonder if we'll get more standalone cheap sets like this in the near future. And on top of that, it's also kind of just nostalgic to me because this really reminds me of the old sub $10 sets from the early 2000s. Also, one more thing I want to say is that I'm really a big fan of this new box art that's themed to the Mandalorian and Grogu movie. The bright, vibrant electric blue is very reminiscent of the 25th anniversary box arts from 2024, and those are some of my most favorite box arts of all time. But opening up the set and digging in, on the inside you're just going to find 2 unnumbered bags, along with a loose piece and a little box that holds Mando's cape, and then of course your instruction manual. The figures in this set definitely aren't anything crazy, however they're not bad either. The Mandalorian is the same arm-printed Mandalorian figure we've been seeing for a few years at this point, but I mean, I'm not complaining about that because if it isn't broke, don't fix it. It looks really good, it's got great arm printing and great detailing all around. Now, one thing I do need to mention is that for a long time, this set was actually rumored to include the UCS Razor Crest minifigure from 2022, and then obviously, as we can see, that rumor did not end up being true, and I know a lot of people are probably upset about that, and a lot of other people are probably happy about that. I personally don't really care. For one, including that figure technically would have been inaccurate because it doesn't have the same armor that he's seen wearing when he's on the speeder bike, and then on top of that, it's also not like LEGO claimed that figure was going to be exclusive to the Razor Crest anyway, so it really doesn't matter. But this is still a very good figure. It's just a common one. Next up here we have Grogu. This is the same Grogu they've been making since, I believe, 2019 or 2020, so there's literally nothing new to see here. The speeder bike is definitely not the most exciting set ever made, because obviously, after all, it is just $10, but I will say that at this scale, they did do a good job with it. It's pretty clean and fairly detailed, and actually pretty accurate too. There's some nice techniques going on here, especially with the rods connecting the front half to the back half. I thought that was a pretty satisfying part to build. And then on the back here, you're going to find a little clip to hold his blaster, and then you're also going to find a little satchel or pouch, whatever you want to call it, to hold Grogu. And I'm not going to lie, when you have both the figures in this set, it looks pretty solid. I'm actually enjoying this quite a bit. And again, this set as a whole really does make me optimistic that we could potentially get more standalone sub $20 sets in the future. I really think just any other speeder with a single minifigure would work pretty well, or maybe even something like the old lightsaber duel sets from the early 2000s. And when it comes to rating this set, this might surprise some of you guys, but I'm actually going to give it a 10. Let me know what you guys think about this set down in the comments below. If you're new, please consider subscribing, and if you want to check out more of my videos, you can see them on the screen right now. Today we're going to be taking a look at 75437 Cobb Vanth Speeder. This set just released on January 1st with 207 pieces and a nasty retail price of $35 US. Now obviously I haven't opened the set yet, so I don't really know how small or big this build is, but at first glance this does not feel like a $35 set at all. On the bright side though, it does include 2 long-awaited figures, that being a new Cad Bane and Cobb Vanth, and from what I can tell with this box art, it looks like LEGO pretty much went all out with them, so that's very exciting. And then on top of that, like I said with the Mandalorian speeder, I love this new Mandalorian and Grogu themed box art. I love the vibrant blue because it pops and it reminds me of the 25th anniversary box art, which I really like. But opening up the box and digging in, on the inside you're going to find just 3 numbered bags, along with of course your instruction manual. Taking a look at the 2 figures here, LEGO actually really did go all out with them, which is really refreshing to see. Here we have Cad Bane, and this is the first Cad Bane LEGO has made since the one that came in the Justifier in 2022, and that was a $170 set, so getting one in a cheaper set, well, quote-unquote cheaper set like this is pretty nice to see. And he's very highly detailed. He's got arm printing on both arms, which is really nice to see in a cheaper set, along with amazing continuous torso to leg printing, along with some pretty minimal back printing. And then here we can get a good look at his face print, along with his breathing tubes that look absolutely amazing. His face print actually does pretty well represent what we see in the Book of Boba Fett, and you definitely can differentiate this from the Clone Wars version, so that's nice. Overall, LEGO just blew this figure out of the water, and I can see it becoming pretty sought after very quickly. Next up here we have Cobb Vanth in his scrapped Boba Fett armor, and just like Cad Bane, this is simply just a beautiful looking figure. He too has arm printing that is very highly detailed and looks amazing, and then from there, just the amount of detail on his helmet and his torso print and his leg prints is incredible. They really knocked it out of the park with this sort of scuffed and banged up look from all the damage this armor has taken. And then on the back, you're of course going to have his jetpack, along with printing underneath the jetpack, and if you prefer to have him not wear his helmet, he of course also comes with a hairpiece, where you can get a nice look at that face print that is double-sided. And then you're also going to notice that he comes with a Western style blaster that I think fits him really well. Overall, these two minifigures are pretty much perfect, and honestly, after the sloppiness of minifigures in sets like the Death Star and even the recent Mandalorian battle pack, seeing minifigures like this that actually have a lot of thought and effort put into them is actually really refreshing. And it's kind of disappointing that LEGO doesn't try this hard with figures more often. And just like the figures, the speeder is extremely detailed as well. Like, actually, it's kind of bizarre how much detail they're able to pack onto this small little build. Now, does it feel like a $35 build? No, not even close. But that doesn't take away the fact that it is dang near perfect. Taking a look at the driver's seat here, there's a lot going on. He's got like a little footrest there, or a step up, I guess. And then underneath the seat, you have some cool techniques pulling off some nice shaping. And then at the front, you're going to have his two giant handlebars that can move back and forth, obviously. And then of course, you can grab Cobb Vanth and sit him in the seat. And I'm not going to lie, he looks pretty small sitting in there, but it's definitely still pretty cool. And then from there, you're going to have the massive engine thruster on the back, which is definitely my favorite part of the build. I just think it looks really epic. There's also going to be some greebling right above that, and then loads of greebling on the left side here. Again, just the amount of detail they packed into this little build is ridiculous. It kind of blew me away. And then from there, there's going to be even more detail and greebling on the top, and then this section right here can actually pop off, revealing a little storage area where you're going to find some blue milk along with what I assume is supposed to be a carrot, and this will also act as a place to store his hairpiece or his helmet, whichever one you want to put in there. And then from there, you're going to have some nice red pieces showing on the front right side, and then of course the massive pod racer wings on the front and the engine intake. And then if you're wondering, this is what the bottom looks like, not a whole lot to look at. I mean, I'm honestly just simply really impressed with this build. I was not expecting it to be this good. Again, my favorite part is definitely the engine on the back. I just think it looks awesome how massive and kind of dramatically oversized it is. But overall, it just absolutely sucks that this set has to cost $35, because if you couldn't tell so far throughout this video, I pretty much think all the content is perfect, the minifigures are detailed, the build is detailed, everything's pretty much perfect. And if this was maybe a $20 or $25 set at most, I'd probably give it a 10 out of 10 without hesitation. But no, LEGO just always has to find a way to ruin perfectly good sets, which just sucks. I mean, it's $10 more expensive than it needs to be for absolutely no reason. And I really hate that because it's holding it back a lot. So because of the price, I'm going to take off 2 points and give it an 8 out of 10. Let me know what you guys think about this set down in the comments below. If you're new, please consider subscribing. And if you want to check out more of my videos, you can see the link on the screen right now. Today we're going to be taking a look at a set that I'm honestly pretty surprised even exists, that being 75440 AT-AT. This set just released on January 1st with 525 pieces and a pretty bad retail price of $65 US, which is actually $5 more than the $60 gingerbread AT-AT that just released in October, and in a second I'll compare these two sets. But back to this AT-AT, it's part of the midi-scale sub-theme, which LEGO has now rebranded to the Starship Collection. However, as you can see, it's obviously not a starship, it's an AT-AT, a ground vehicle, which is something that actually really pleases me because making ground vehicles into mini-scale sets is something I've been wanting LEGO to do for a long time. However, at the same time, in hindsight, it does mean that rebranding the sub-theme into the Starship Collection was kind of pointless if they were just going to go ahead and make a set like this anyways. I know the name Starship Collection definitely sounds more professional, however, I wish it would have just stayed mini-scale like it always was since the beginning. But still, this set's existence really excites me, and it makes me hope that we could get more ground vehicles as mini-scale sets in the future. On the back of the box, you're going to find another render of the set, along with 2 images at the bottom right, one showing the dimensions of the build, being 7.5 inches long and 6.5 inches tall, and then right under that, you're going to find a picture of the snow speeder in the movie wrapping its cable around the legs. Opening up the box and digging in, on the inside, you're going to find just 4 number bags, along with your instruction manual, and of course, since this is an 18+ set, it's going to have some information in the first few pages about the design process of the set and the vehicle in Star Wars. It's some pretty cool stuff. You can pause and read it if you want to. The build itself is also going to have some little hidden Easter eggs that are explained out in the instructions. One, as you can see here, are some snowtroopers that are hidden in the hull of the AT-AT, and this other one is General Veers along with the AT-AT driver hidden in the cockpit. But now taking a look at the actual build itself, I have to say it looks a lot better than I was expecting it to. After seeing it in the product images and from other people's videos reviewing it, I kind of just had low expectations, but after seeing it in person here, I have to admit it looks a lot better than I was expecting. But first, we of course have to compare it to the $60 gingerbread AT-AT that released in October, and as you can see, there is definitely a pretty noticeable size difference. Now obviously you do have to take into consideration that the Medisco one has the stand, which does add some extra pieces. However, even with taking that into account, it's still quite a bit smaller, and it retails for $5 more at $65. And not to mention, the gingerbread AT-AT literally includes an exclusive minifigure, and obviously the Medisco one doesn't include anything, so yeah, that tells you about everything you need to know. I think this set is about $15 overpriced, and instead should retail for $50 and be in line with the other smaller Medisco sets like the Acclimator as well as the Invisible Hand. But now actually diving into just the build itself, the first thing you might notice is that its proportions and its shaping are kind of out of whack. For example, like its head is a bit awkwardly shaped and its feet are a bit oversized. However, I'm not gonna lie, I actually kind of like that. It definitely gives the build a bit of charm and character. It almost even has kind of a cartoonish look, except in a good way. Like, I like it. And then of course you're gonna have the snowspeeder here at the bottom wrapping its cable around the legs, and the snowspeeder design itself is very simple. It's definitely a micro scale build. However, honestly, it looks really awesome and it gets the job done. I love the angle that they were able to pose it at. I think it looks really cinematic. And then from there, you're of course going to have the cable that wraps all the way around the legs. And then speaking of the legs themselves, as you can see, they have printed pieces on them as the joints. And then overall, kind of like I mentioned earlier, their proportions are a bit off. They're pretty blocky looking and the feet are slightly oversized. And this definitely might be a bit distasteful to some people. However, I like how they look. And then the feet also look really good. They got quite a bit of detail on them. And then also I just love the way they were able to position and pose the feet on here. I think it looks really good. And if you're wondering, they're just held in by Technic pins. It's kind of tricky to take off because it can break easily. And if you want, actually, I guess, as you can see here, the AT-AT can stand up on its own without the stand. So I guess that's a different display option if you want to do that. But then as you can see here, the stand is really just a black base with 3 Technic pins as well as a sloped piece there. Now, another thing I do want to say about the stand is that I low-key wish it was white. I feel like that was definitely a missed opportunity to kind of make it feel like almost a diorama and recreate the Hoth snow. Like, I mean, I think it would have been really clean if they just made the entire stand white and left the printed plaque black. Just kind of a missed opportunity in my eyes. But then moving on from the bottom half of the build to the top half, like I mentioned earlier, the shape of the head is kind of off. However, in my opinion, it definitely doesn't look bad. I actually like how it looks quite a bit. And then of course, it's also fairly detailed. You're gonna find everything you'd want on an AT-AT head, the 4 main cannons along with the little red transparent piece being the window. And the head itself can actually slightly turn side to side as well. It doesn't have that big of a range of motion, but it's definitely enough to pose it in a few different ways. And then from there, the sides of the head on each side can actually fold outwards, where you can get a look inside at General Veers along with the AT-AT driver that I showed earlier. Moving on from the head to the back half of the walker, or the hull, I guess, it looks good. It has very minimal detailing, not anything crazy, but it gets the job done. And the shaping is also nice. They got the angles down right. However, one thing I do have to say is that it is a bit narrow, as you can see here. It definitely doesn't look bad. However, I do have to say I wish it was a little bit wider just to be more accurate. And if you're wondering, the hull is not accessible. The side panels are fixed in place. There's no way to open them or access the interior or anything like that. And then also, if you're wondering, here is what the bottom looks like. There's not much going on, but I mean, it gets the job done. It looks fine. But overall, I do have to say, this build actually surprised me quite a bit. I wasn't expecting to like it this much. It's definitely a very charming little build that you can sit on a desk or a nightstand or something, and I really like that about it. And it also makes me excited at the possibility of getting more ground vehicles as mini-scale sets in the future. I would really like to see maybe a turbo tank or an ATTE. However, unfortunately, as good as this build is, and as much as I am enjoying it, the price is absolutely pathetic. Like I mentioned earlier, it really should be $50. $65 is just way too far of a stretch. And if I had to rate this set without the price, just on the build alone, I'd probably give it an 8.5 out of 10. But because the price is so atrocious, I'm going to take off a few points and give it a 7. So let me know what you guys think about this set down in the comments below. If you're new, please consider subscribing. And if you want to check out more of my videos, you can see them on the screen right now. Today we're going to be taking a look at a very long-awaited set, that being 75441 Venator-class attack cruiser. This set just released on January 1st with 643 pieces and a pretty gross retail price of $80 US. However, I'll talk about that more here in a little bit. First off, I just want to say I'm glad we finally have a midi-scale Venator. In 2024, obviously, as many of you guys know, LEGO released the Invisible Hand, and because of that, everyone obviously wanted a Venator to pair with it, but then for some reason in 2025, they ended up releasing an Acclimator, which was really cool, just kind of random because it's not necessarily what we are wanting. But then now, finally, 2 years later in 2026, we have a Venator to pair with that Invisible Hand. On the back of the box, you're going to find another render of the build, along with a pretty cool picture of the ship in Revenge of the Sith at the bottom left, and then at the bottom right, you're going to find the dimensions measuring 12 inches long and 6 inches tall. And then opening up the box and digging in, on the inside, you're going to find 5 separately numbered bags, along with your instruction manual, and since this is an 18+ set, by tradition, the first few pages of the instruction manual are going to have some information about the ship, which is pretty interesting. There's some cool pictures in here and cool information per usual that you can pause and read if you want to. And then on the inside of the builds, you're going to find some Easter eggs, which are going to be explained out in the instructions here, like this one right here showing an officer briefing a clone trooper, and then this other one, which I think is pretty cool, showing what's supposed to be Anakin and Obi-Wan's Jedi interceptors. And of course, as you continue building, both of these get covered up and there's no way to access them, but it's still cool that they're included. Taking a look at the actual build here, I do have to say it is a little bit larger than I was expecting it to be. Now, don't get me wrong, it's nowhere near the size of an $80 set. However, I was just for some reason expecting it to be a bit smaller. But to really put its size and its retail price into perspective, here it is compared to the midi-scale Home 1 that released in January of 2025. And this set has a retail price of $70, $10 cheaper than this Venator, and it released only 1 year ago. As you can tell, they're pretty much the same size, with the Home 1 actually feeling a bit larger because it's not flat like the Venator. It's about the same length, however, it's a bit more bulkier and has a bit more going on. And again, it's $10 cheaper at $70. So that already tells you this Venator is about $10 more expensive than it needs to be. But then from there, it gets even worse when you compare it to the Executor that released in 2023, which also retailed for $70. And this is where I was like, alright, I knew this set was overpriced, but seeing it next to this Executor that's $10 cheaper and also on shelves right now alongside it made me realize that like LEGO has kind of lost their minds with this pricing. I thought this Venator was maybe give or take $10 overpriced and should retail for $70, but after seeing it next to this Executor right here, I was like, alright, maybe $70 is even too high for it. It should really be about $60 or $65. But no, for some reason in 2026, it is $80. It is $10 more than this Executor that you see next to it that is dang near twice the size. But then of course, lastly, we have to pair it with the Invisible Hand and recreate the iconic scene. And I have to say, they do look really, really good next to each other. But even this Invisible Hand here is near the same size and it only retails for $55. There's a $25 price difference between these two sets right here, which is just so insane to me. LEGO is literally out of their minds trying to charge $80 for this Venator. But I mean, hey, on the bright side, I guess we can finally pair these two sets with each other, and it does look pretty good. But now actually diving into just the Venator itself, unsurprisingly, it looks pretty solid. It's not perfect though. There are a few things I'm not a big fan of about it. However, I'll get to that here in a second. But one thing I do have to say is they did a really good job with the top of the front half right here. The stripe looks really good, and the Republic Navy logos are also printed pieces, so that's very nice to see. And then just the shaping is really good as well. As you can see here, it kind of slopes downwards from the middle of the ship to the front of the ship, which is accurate and something that's kind of impressive to be able to pull off at this scale. However, at the same time, still talking about the shaping, there is one thing I don't like about it, and that's that I wish it was a bit thinner, and I mean a bit flatter actually. As you can see here, especially the front half, it's just a little bit too thick, I guess, or in other words, just a little bit bulky and kind of blocky, and it's kind of falling short at capturing the sort of sleek look that these ships have in universe, and especially the sleek look that the UCS model is able to capture. Again, it's mainly just the front half. The back half isn't really that bad, but I just wish it was a bit flatter and a bit sleeker. Overall, it's just a little bit more bulkier than I would like. Moving on though, on the front here, you might notice these two clip pieces that stick out the side, and these are actually supposed to represent the cannons that are on the front of these Venators. They're very small and honestly not very noticeable either, but they get the job done. But then moving on from the front section to the back section, taking a look at the bridge area here, it looks solid. They got the shaping down. It's not really as clean as I think it could be. Some areas of it are just a little bit bulky for my liking. However, it still gets the job done. I mean, it looks like the bridge of a Venator. But then moving on from there, under the bridge, you're going to notice the cannons. And these, as you can see, have a very, very simple design. Honestly, I think they might be a bit too simple. I wish they could could actually rotate. I guess if you want, you can actually point them up and down here. It's kind of annoying because they can break off easily, but you can do that for different posability if you want to. However, for a set of this price, I wish LEGO could have just, maybe tried a little bit harder on these, but they still execute the look decently, I guess. But then moving on from there to the tips of the wings back here, you're going to notice these printed stripe pieces, which again, like the Republic Navy logos, I'm very happy these are printed, because in the past with these mini scale sets, LEGO has cheaped out and done pieces like these as stickers, so seeing that they're printed on this set is definitely kind of relieving. Moving on to the sides here, the greebling looks really nice, and as you can see, the little transparent piece representing the hangar bay door, and the way they did this greebling is actually really interesting. Basically, it's all one piece, as you can see here, just this weirdly shaped kind of arm piece that has a sword on one end and a blaster on the other end, and it's really tricky to get on camera, but basically these slide in here on a Technic pin, and then the arms kind of fold inwards into the side of the ship. Again, it's tricky to get on camera, but it looks pretty cool, and it was definitely interesting to build. Moving on to the back here, taking a look at the engines, this is probably the best part of the build. I just think the engines look really cool. I mean, the engine design on Venators kind of just looks cool in general, but still, LEGO did a good job here. I like how they designed it. They got the staggered look down great, and then even just the tail end of the ship that sticks out in between the engines also looks really good. From there, the bottom side also actually has some detailing on it. As you can see here, you can very easily take it off the stand. It's just held in by Technic pieces. And on the bottom side, you're going to find more printed stripe pieces, which I really enjoy, and then another big red stripe towards the front of the ship, which is pretty cool. However, when you're handling the build without the stand, one thing I do have to say is that it just has a very kind of fragile and flimsy feel. The panels just feel loose and they move around a lot and kind of feel like they're about to fall off. And also, as you can see here, the panel that's the red stripe on the front can pop up and come loose very easily, which I don't like at all. I mean, I have to say that it's cool that you can kind of very easily take the stand off and handle the ship yourself. However, again, it just feels kind of fragile and I'm not a big fan of that. But then from there, you can just grab your stand and very easily put it back on the bottom. And then speaking of the stand itself, it's just your typical midi-scale stand design. It's sleek and it looks good and it gets the job done. And then of course on the front here, you're going to have the printed plaque that says Venator-class attack cruiser. But overall, I had to say the set as a whole is kind of just, well, it's a bit underwhelming, actually. Now, don't misunderstand me, that in no way means I think it's a bad set. It looks good, and it resembles a Venator. I mean, it's a solid build, but at the same time, to me at least, it just doesn't feel like an S-tier midi-scale set. And when I say that, I mean like the Executor, or the Millennium Falcon, or even the Invisible Hand. I'd say those are S-tier midi-scale sets, and this one is kind of just like a tier below that. And since it's because, well, a Venator, a midi-scale set we've been wanting for a long time, it's just kind of underwhelming for it to not be as good as the best ones. Again, I don't think it's bad. It's a really solid build. It's just not at the top. And not to mention again, it's stupidly overpriced. This should be like a $65 or $60 set, not $80. So if I had to rate just the build itself, not including the price, I'd probably give it an 8 out of 10. However, including the price and the set as a whole, I'm gonna give it a 6. So let me know what you guys think about this set down in the comments below. If you're new, please consider subscribing. And if you want to check out more of my videos, you can see them on the screen right now. Today we're going to be taking a look at one of the more controversial sets of recent times, that being 75449 Siege of Mandalore Battle Pack. This set just released on January 1st with 116 pieces and a disgusting retail price of $23 US, which right off the bat is one thing I just immediately hate about this set. $23 for a battle pack even in 2026 is absolutely pathetic to me, and even $20 is too much for a battle pack. I think these should really be no more than $17 or $18, but yet somehow in 2026 LEGO has found a way to make them 23, and it's just ridiculous. On top of that, this set also has some controversies about the minifigures, however, I will give my thoughts on that here in a second. On the back of the box, you're going to find another render of the builds and the minifigures, which I do have to admit does look kind of cool. And then opening up the box and digging in, on the inside, you're just going to find 3 unnumbered bags, along with 3 loose pieces, and then of course your instruction manual. Now, taking a look at the 4 minifigures that are included in this set, here is the female Mandalorian, and I'll talk about the helmet last. From the neck down, it does look really good. I mean, this is some very highly detailed printing about what you would expect on a minifigure in 2026. It's also, of course, got the gunmetal gray jetpack, which I think looks good, and then even printing underneath that as well. And then also, as you might notice, this figure actually has a printed waist cape, which obviously is not my preference. I wish it was a physical cloth waist cape. However, I do have to say, it actually does look really cool, and it actually resembles a waist cape, unlike the crappy karate belt looking ones on the clone troopers. But moving on to the actual elephant in the room with this minifigure, that being the visor on the helmet, helmet being gray instead of black, and I personally really think it needs to be black. For one, obviously it being black is accurate. However, not only is it inaccurate, it also just doesn't look good in my opinion. And I see a lot of people say, oh, it doesn't matter if it's inaccurate if it still looks good, and I actually really agree with this way of thinking. The best example I can think of is the recent young Boba Fett from the UCS Slave 1 that just released last May. That figure is inaccurate because his arms should be a darker shade of blue. However, I still actually like how that figure looks. Now, don't get things mixed up, I still wish it was accurate. However, the figure we ended up getting is not aesthetically unpleasing. However, to me at least, that's not the case with this Mandalorian right here. I think the visor being gray instead of black and just having a small black outline makes a lack of contrast, and because of that, all of the grays in the helmet just kind of run together, and it gives it a really dull look, and I don't like that. Actually, I really don't like that. I think it looks ugly. And then also, not to mention, last time they made these figures back in 2013, they made the visors black then, so why aren't they doing it now? Now, fortunately, I actually can't say the same thing about the male Mandalorian. The visor on his helmet actually has more color surrounding it, that being red and black, so it does create more of a contrast with it being gray, and the color palette on the helmet isn't running together like it is on the female one, and it actually does look pretty good. Now, don't get me wrong, I still wish it was black, which is the accurate color. However, unlike the female one, it doesn't look bad. But then from there, you're obviously going to have great printing on the torso and the legs, along with the back, and then he's also going to have a nice face print along with a blaster and what I assume is supposed to be some type of shield. Moving on to the 332nd Clone Troopers, I simply just don't like these guys. The 332nd Troopers have always been one of my least favorite battalions. I simply just think the orange and blue colorway is kind of ugly, and also not to mention we already got a battle pack of these guys back in 2023, so because of that, they're already a very common figure. And in this set specifically, I think it would have been a lot better if we would have gotten either 501st Clone Troopers or just standard white grunts, or maybe one of each. But seeing these guys again is just really underwhelming. And then also not to mention, of course, they have the helmet holes. I'm always going to say this, I think the helmet holes make the shape of the helmet look ugly. With these Phase 2 Clone Troopers, LEGO needs to find a way to keep the shape of the old helmet while including the helmet holes. And until they do that, I'm just not going to like how they look. Overall, this minifigure lineup pretty much went 1 for 4 for me. Like I said, the only figure I think looks good is the male Mandalorian, and even he still needs a black visor. And moving on to the 2 builds here included with this set, starting off with the speeder. Contrary to the minifigures, I actually love how this looks. It has such a unique and sleek design that really does make it feel like it's Mandalorian. I also love the design of the engines using the cylinder pieces, and then you're going to find a printed control panel along with this blaster up here that's actually on a ball joint, so you can move it around and aim it in any which direction you want to, which I think is nice. And when you put one of the Mandalorians in here, specifically the male one that actually looks good, the speeder, in my opinion, is freaking awesome. I honestly love this thing. The little clone barricade build definitely isn't as exciting. You're going to find a little printed sort of yellow caution piece right there where you're going to be able to place your clone trooper to man the blaster on it, and then there's going to be a little box that holds his blaster. And I mean, for a battle pack build, it looks alright, nothing crazy. The speeder is a lot better. But overall, the speeder and the male Mandalorian really are the only redeemable things about this set, to me at least, but they're really not enough to make me forget about the other stuff. I don't like the clone troopers they went with, I think the female Mandalorian looks ugly, and again, the price of $23 for battle packs nowadays is just so ridiculous to me. So because of that, you guys probably aren't going to like this, but I'm feeling a 6 out of 10 for this one. Let me know what you guys think about it down in the comments below. If you're new, please consider subscribing, and if you want to check out more of my videos, you can see them on the screen right now.